So, folks, we have been talking about certain names on the NHL free agent market. Leave it to Elliotte Friedman to go out there and stir the pot a little bit more. The recent 32 Thoughts podcast from yesterday, August 3rd, had some extra info that I think we should all be interested to dive into. We'll look at a few tweets, we'll go over a few trade updates, we're talking about Jack Roslovic, formerly of the Carolina Hurricanes, and we're also going over the latest on a Sidney Crosby trade. Yes, you know we had to do it, man. When Elliotte Friedman talks about a Crosby trade, we listen and we respond. So, let's start out with the more likely of the two pieces to end up moving. Of course, it's Jack Roslovic. In fact, it's guaranteed that he's going to move from Carolina somewhere else because he's a free agent right now. And Friedman went out there on the podcast and said this. Another player we talked about for Toronto was Jack Roslovic. There are still a few teams looking at him. I've heard 5 or 6. We know with Toronto, they're trying to move money around. And so, Friedman's update here is that Toronto, probably, potentially, interested in Jack Roslovic. He says 5 or 6 other teams are also in the mix. I would probably stand to bet that Vancouver is in there. We've been hearing the Canucks linked to Roslovic for months now, and thinking about what this guy could be, I'm just very grateful that apparently, based off of all the speculation we have heard, Vancouver isn't looking at Jack Roslovic as like a bona fide, absolutely guaranteed, this is our second line center solution type of guy. It's not like he'd come into Vancouver and be the JT Miller replacement. It's not like he'd go over to Toronto and be the Mitch Marner replacement. It's not like he's that guy, but he is a talented enough name to justify bringing on. 39 points in 81 games played the most recent season with Carolina. There are some consistency issues that have been documented both in his time in Winnipeg and in Columbus. He peaked at 45 points in 81 games in 21-22, and then 44 points in 77 games the year after that. 20-goal season, one time in his NHL career, and then again in Carolina. So he is a player that can produce the points. You just really want more out of this guy when he doesn't have the puck, and you want to see him be able to be productive consistently throughout the season. It just hasn't happened for Jack Roslovic. At this point, he is 28 years old, 6'1", 194, center right wing, a right-handed guy. There is a lot of potential in Roslovic when he is on, but you just gotta know that he is on in order to fully believe in it. That's the thing, if you come into a Jack Roslovic season expecting him to be super consistent and always productive, you're gonna be disappointed. And whether or not Vancouver is a team that could benefit a lot from that, or Toronto, it remains to be seen. To be fair, though, I will say, when it comes to the Canucks, Roslovic is more offensively talented, in my opinion, than a lot of the guys the Canucks have that are playing center at the moment. Like, obviously, Roslovic is more of an NHL product right now than Aatu Räty is. You can debate Filipino, but Filipino's health injuries situation makes it a lot more difficult to come to a conclusion there. With Toronto, we know that they have had themselves the additions of guys like Pezzetta, Matias Michelli, Nick Waugh, Dakota Joshua. In fact, Spectors Hockey went out there and said that it might be a little bit difficult to grab Roslovic because of these acquisitions. Friedman reported that 5 or 6 teams are believed to be interested in Roslovic, including the Maple Leafs. The 28-year-old forward remains the best player available in the depleted UFA market. He's said to be still evaluating his options. Friedman thinks the remaining UFAs, like Roslovic, aren't willing to sign yet because they don't want to accept deals that could be considered too much of a bargain. Spector's note goes out there and says this, that the Maple Leafs were linked to Roslovic last month, but their acquisition of Dakota Joshua from the Canucks and their re-signing of Nick Robertson leaves them with just over $1.9 million. That's another reason why they must move out a forward like David Kampf or Calle Jarnkrok. So, there seems to be some food for thought with Jack Roslovic and Toronto. But of course, I had to toss the Vancouver angle in there as well because they are definitely one of the 5 or 6 teams that Friedman is referring to. But now, shifting gears from one available player to another, quote unquote, okay, maybe he's not really available. Let's go out there and read what Elliotte Friedman said about Sidney Crosby. Here it is. There's an opening conversation about Kyle Dubas. I had a couple of people ask me about the possibility of Nick Robertson in Pittsburgh. Kyle Dubas knows him, they got the arbitration settled, and the Leafs have to clear some bodies. Okay, nice. Kyle Dubas going out there and acquiring his former guys like they're from the Sioux. One more time for the masses, folks. Let's get some Toronto names over into Pittsburgh. Friedman also said this about the Penguins and Sidney Crosby. He is going to start the year in Pittsburgh. I don't think there's any doubt about that. He's definitely not getting traded this summer. He also said regarding Penguins offseason trades, I don't think there's anything imminent on file. I'm assuming things are going to heat up later in the summer. Now, obviously, these trades that are being referred to here, we're talking about guys like Erik Karlsson, Rickard Rakell, Brian Rust, not necessarily Crosby and Malkin, for example. But honestly, I kind of get tired of hearing stuff like this. Oh yeah, things are going to heat up later in the summer. That's what they said a month ago. They said a month ago that trades would be starting to sporadically sprinkle in throughout August and that we would start to see more activity than we're used to because the free agency period itself wasn't really greeted with too much movement. A lot of guys ended up staying with the teams they were playing on earlier, and there were no moves. That's it. It was just like Marner to Vegas, and that was pretty much the biggest trade that we saw. No disrespect to K'Andre Miller, I guess, but still, we started to hear, oh yeah, this summer is going to be filled with movement, and a lot of GMs are going to want to make corrections and do stuff. But we haven't had a trade since, okay, let's go to NHL Trade Tracker 2025 and see when was the last trade that we saw. It was Oskar Olausson for Daniel Gushchin. And then Dakota Joshua to Toronto, and Artur Shilovs to Pittsburgh. Like, these trades were small. We haven't seen any really big moves since that Mitch Marner deal, pretty much. Like, oh, Matt Dumba. That's not a big trade. Isaac Howard. Admittedly, not a big trade. Lots of trades to go out here and talk about from July 1st to July 10th, pretty much, but everything has been quiet since then. So now Friedman's going out there and saying that, yeah, I'm assuming things are going to heat up later in the summer. Okay, later in the summer, like we had been hearing all summer long so far. But Sidney Crosby, yeah, okay, he's not going to get traded now. Nick Kypreos predicted a Crosby trade around the Olympics time where Crosby would get that motivational spark to be competitive again. Who knows if that prediction is likely to go down, but at the very least, Pens fans, at the very least for now, Sidney Crosby will remain on your team until the season begins, and then we'll evaluate then. If the Penguins absolutely stink and Crosby's putting up like a point per game, 1.5 points per game, and there are some other teams like Montreal that are super competitive and they need centers because Kirby Dach is injured still, who knows if a trade actually is possible throughout the course of this season. At least not now, though, during the summer. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below about this Elliotte Friedman update in regards to Jack Roslovic, the status on him being targeted by Toronto and 5 other teams, as well as this Sidney Crosby trade speculation from Friedge. Thoughts in the comment section below. I hope you enjoyed this British 9, and bye.